2.
Hey everybody, welcome back. I just wanted to take a second here at the beginning of this episode just to let you fill you guys in on a couple of changes that's coming. You may have noticed we've got a different title, Worship Perspectives. That doesn't mean anything else is necessarily changing. We're still going to be offering, the same content. The thing is, we really wanted to focus a little bit more on broader perspectives than just staying so focused in on little budget things. I think we really, with the group that we have here, have a lot more to offer and to learn as if we just broaden our perspectives a little bit. So I did want to let you know we're still going to have the same video podcast that you've been watching, or at least for now. We're still going to have the review videos. There's all going to be all of that stuff. But we just wanted to be able to basically just find a way to be able to serve you better. And that's really what this is all about. We're all just here to serve, and we're here to help in any way that we can. So I just wanted to just start that off real quick. So welcome welcome to Worship Perspectives. I'm here with Matt and Jameson tonight. Just want to talk about something that's near and dear to all of us, and I'm sure this isn't just us that struggle with this. I mean, this is a global thing, and that's wearing too many hats. What happens when you have so many responsibilities piling up that you don't know how to allocate and budget for each of them, and you don't know how to budget not just your money but your time for each of them? And that's something that we're here to just have an open discussion, not really an agenda here. We just want to discuss it and see if what we can't pull out of thin air and find maybe a way that we could help with that. So with that being said, I just wanted to start off with responsibilities. And the thing about us as servants in Christ's church is that there's a lot that we will do just because we're doing it for the Lord. And that's something that we have to be really careful about, because not only does that possibly rob someone else of an opportunity to serve, but we also need to make sure that we're not overloading ourselves and causing burnout. And that's something that we're gonna discuss in a later episode in much more depth. But really, let's just start off by just going over, what are our basic responsibilities? What's expected of us? What are we responsible for? There's differences between being a paid staff member and being a volunteer. We want to take that into consideration as we're approaching each of these topics. Jameson, what's your current responsibility level?
Well, mine's pretty broad right now, but lost my train of thought. I'm actually the a worship leader. Some churches would call it a worship pastor. My last church called it director of worship, and I'm responsible for all the music that happens at the church. But more importantly, if I wanted to go back to just trying to have too many hats. I'm not currently in a situation with too many hats, but you have ABC responsibilities to start with, whether as a staff member or as a volunteer. If I say, hey Rob, you're going to play guitar for me every week, right? Well, now that's your responsibility. So if someone else comes along and asks you to help with another project, you have to decide then to take on the extra hat or not. So your responsibilities is what you have committed to do, and then you've got the additional things that you could do voluntarily.
All right, yeah, definitely. With me, I have several different responsibilities. I'm a drummer, I'm a guitar player, I'm a musician. I'm also a sound tech. I also run cameras. I serve at multiple churches. So I fully agree with what you're saying. The way that I got into having too many hats was because I allowed it to happen. And that's something that kind of blindsided me, because I was, okay, yeah, can you do this? Can you play this for me? Yeah, absolutely, sure. Okay, well, can you come play this for me? Well, yeah, absolutely, sure, no problem. Okay, well, and how that started was I was a sound tech on the team because my sound tech had needed to take a little bit of time off. He had some family stuff coming up, and nobody else was really prepared to run the soundboard. I grew up in a recording studio, so I knew about soundboards. So I got with him and I said, you know what, I'll help you out with this project. And it ended up being, I think I've been probably helping with the sound team for about 5 years there at that church, maybe 6. And while I was up there doing that, the church's drummer went on vacation. Well, at that point, nobody at the church had ever even knew that I was a musician, because all I'd ever done was help on the sound team. So when I'm up there in the sound room and the sound tech was there, and I noticed there was no drums, I ran downstairs, went and got behind the drum kit and just started playing. Well, then I became the backup drummer. While I was the backup drummer, I committed to help another church with their worship team, and then I had a church split, and the drummer left, so I became my church's only drummer. So at that point, now I'm trying to help another church out with theirs. I'm the only drummer that I've got, still running sound, running cameras. So it put a serious load on my family. It put a serious load on my time. And it got to the point where if I was at church, I was working and didn't really get a chance to just sit back and soak in the message, because I had 11 other responsibilities going on at the same time. And that's what I'm saying. Not necessarily, it's not a poor me situation. I got myself into it. It's more a cautionary tale, because we only have so much time in our day. And if we're committing to doing things that are just overlapping on that time, then we're getting ourselves into situations where we can't give our best to each one of these ministries that we're focusing on. And so that's really just what I wanted to hit on. What are your thoughts on that, Jameson?
Well, I think a better way for me to kind of talk about this is, let's take a situation where you already have too many hats, and you have to look around and say, "Oh, well, how did this happen?" And as as a worship leader, sometimes it's a situation where no one else is there to do it. So now you're doing this each week, like building the slides, for example. So there was no one building the slides. I need to get the slides built. And then as long as you're doing them and not asking someone or seeking someone else to come in, then you're going to be the one who's doing it. And it's hard to, that's just kind of falls under your responsibilities. The other things, like let's say someone asks you to do something outside of your responsibilities either week, a good way to handle that and not get stuck into it as a recurring thing is you can answer with, well, I'll do it this time, and then I like to say, I can't do that instead of no. I say, well, I'm not going to be able to do that. It feels better than saying no, but saying no's hard. And most of the time, people with too many hats, Rob, have a hard time saying no.
Oh, yes, I'm definitely one of those people. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
Well, hey, can you help me out with the car problem I have after this?
I can this time.
Just kidding.
Well, and that brings up an interesting point. We'll compare this to what we call, and this is a bad word, but a real-world job. Not that church isn't a real-world job, but you know what I mean. Some people are on staff. The problem I have witnessed personally, and I'm in the same boat as Rob, I'm a sound guy. Now, I was more intentional with my sound guyness, for lack of a better word, but I'm also a musician, and yes, I've had to step in and play. But let's say you're at your real-world job, your secular job, and someone comes up and says, hey, I need somebody to do this. Can you help? Well, a lot of times the response is, well, that's not my job. That's not my responsibility. That's good. That's so-and-so, such and things. But at a church, it's different because we're all called to serve. And we all have a servant's heart, or we should have a servant's heart, or strive to have a servant's heart. The problem with that is you end up with a few key people that are just really servant-hearted that take on a lot of responsibility because A, they're there, B, they have that heart, and they want to help. And then what you realize is a few years down the road, they're the first ones that are burnt out, that leave in a split because they're just tired of dealing with it. Nobody ever offered to help, and people say, well, I didn't know there was a need. Well, that was because it was being done. You didn't ask, if there's somewhere you could help. I've personally reached out many times and said, hey, we need sound guys. I'll teach you. I'll train you. And people are like, well, it looks like it's covered every week. Well, it is because nobody's taking time off and stuff. But that's the thing is you don't want to burn bridges. You don't want to be the negative response. But at the end of the day, you want to help and you want to serve. But the other point I wanted to bring is musicians and praise leaders especially and techs fall into a different boat because we're there early, we're there late, we set up, we break down. So when you need things like, let's say, tables put out, there's nobody else at the church. So guess what? Guitarist and the bassist and the sound tech, those are the guys that end up unlocking closets, pulling chairs out, rolling tables out. And the next thing you know, they're like, we're so happy that they help us do that every time. Well, they weren't ever asked to do that. Their heart is to help. they really could use help. So can we ask other people to help? But to y'all's points, yes, it's a combination of wrong place, wrong time, because you're there. It's a combination of having a servant's heart, and at the same time, it's a combination of you want things to go off as smoothly as possible, and you know that if you do it, they will.
So let's go over. Let's just talk real quick about a couple of ways that we can get out from under the issue of wearing too many hats. I mean, where do you find people that can alleviate some of the load from you so that you can focus more on your primary responsibilities? One of the things that I like to suggest is if you are someone who does, like, say, the morning announcements before the service starts or after the service starts, that's a really good platform to be able to say, hey, we're looking for some help with these things. We've got a sign-up sheet out in the foyer. We've got, all of these places where you can plug in and serve. Because, like, one of the very things that I'm absolutely non-bending on is people in God's church should serve God's church. We're all called to be servants. That's biblical. That's scriptural. We are servants, and that's something that if you give other people the opportunity to serve as well, that'll also eliminate some of the extra hats that you're having to wear.
Yeah, that's right. And I have been in a situation several times where I've had to stop and take inventory of doing too many things. And what I have found, the first step is to tell everyone that you're about to trim your schedule and trim your responsibilities. Because not only does that put it out in the open that, hey, I'm looking to cut some of my responsibilities, but someone may be waiting to do one of those things and just thought that was your favorite thing to do, and they didn't want to step on your toes. They didn't know it was a need. I have at churches, and typically do at least once a year, make a flyer for volunteers for the worship team, including tech, and I'll put on there, I should have brought one, responsibilities, time commitment, where if you're like a substitute lighting board person, well, that time commitment is the actual service time, whereas if you were a substitute musician, then you would need an hour for rehearsal midweek, and then you'd need to be at church 2 hours early. So, there's lots of ways to handle that, but you can slowly get out from, because you also realize you may be doing something that someone else is already doing as well.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that really hits hard about having too many hats, especially for the three of us, and there's so many people that are just like us, that are just like us, same scenarios. We're all fathers here. So what we do with the church also affects our family time and our family life. I've probably sat with my wife in 5 or 6 sermons in the past 4 years, just because I'm always up either in the sound room. And please don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining. This is something that I decided to take on. This is a responsibility I decided to take on. But you have to count the costs when you take on a responsibility. What's it going to do to your family? What happens when I'm at the church an hour early for the Sunday evening service, because that's when choir practice is? Well, my kids want to come with me. So what are they doing while I'm playing drums for the choir practice? What are they doing when I'm upstairs in the sound room and I'm putting slides together, or which I don't really take care of, but just as an example. That's something that we have to think about as well. How is our family going to react to this? How is this going to affect our time with our family? And we'll get into another episode on work-life, home-life balance, but I just wanted to tackle that real quick from the perspective of while we're at church serving. Jameson, what about you?
Well, for me, and probably you guys too, I take on too many hats most of the time because I feel like it's simpler for me to just do it than to trust someone else to do it, or to take the time to teach someone how to do it correctly. Say it, well, I'll just do it myself so it'll be done right, and that's not a great way to lead and train. So that's one, another way you can get things off your shoulder is to ask occasionally, hey, who would like to learn, who would like to learn how to do this or that, because there may be an opportunity to train someone. And it's okay to say no. It's okay to just flat out say no. And that family time is precious. I don't have a lot of family time well, we do have a lot of family time, but it's because we make it work. And my kids come to work with me a lot. They have a room at our studio, our music school, not a bedroom, but they have their own room where they can have privacy. And they come to church with me, not all the time, but they come to our church, but they don't come to like rehearsals and stuff. And that's part of it. I was a preacher's kid. I grew up, playing in the fellowship hall while they were having a meeting, and that's okay. But what you don't want to do is blame it. You don't want to blame one thing on the other to try to get that relief. You need to try to get out of it by finding someone else.
And Matt, what about you? With you being a sound tech, primarily, I mean a musician as well, but your primary role is a sound tech, and that is probably one of the roles that just sucks up the most time out of any possible role at church, other than perhaps the lead pastor. The sound tech's job just doesn't stop. So how does that affect your family dynamic while you're at church?
It'd be a lie to say that it doesn't. I mean, I use the analogy, just imagine a doctor, an emergency room doctor. Their family understands, like you said, the cost, that you're going to get called away, you're going to do things. I make it a point to spend time with my family as much as I can outside of work and the church, but at the end of the day, you have to incorporate your family. You have to bring them with you sometimes. They have to understand that, okay, there's an occasional time that I've got to be there before church, so don't plan something during that window that you can help. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of people in a church who serve the church and serve God ultimately through serving at the church. And it doesn't matter if you're setting up tables. It doesn't matter if you're breaking down chairs. It doesn't matter if you're filling the communion things. That's time you could be doing something else. You're giving that time to God. So your family just needs to understand that that's part of it. It's just at the end of the day, it's work-life balance, it's priorities. You have to, yes, I'm going to be up there so many hours a week, but yes, in the other hours, I want to spend as much of that time as I can with my family and doing things.
And also blocking off time, and when something comes up, it's like, no, I can't do that this day, that whole afternoon ever, and whatever your time restraints are. If you can block that off just like you would a job shift, that's a good way to keep that balance and keep that gray line there.
I think the single biggest point to take away from this too is communication. It's communication with your family, it's communication with other staff members, it's communication with other team members to understand that, hey, I'm here to help, I love doing this, but there are limits to my generosity. When your pastor comes to you and says, hey, we've got this extra event, can you run sound for it? If you've already got something planned, you just communicate. Say, hey, I'm sorry. If you'd have told me earlier, maybe, but I can't. Let me talk to the other sound guys. If one of them can, great. And I'll just hit on one last quick thing. This has come about with the involvement of live streaming. There have been times where you have to say, hey, we're just not going to live stream this week. Hey, we just can't do that this week unless you want to do an acoustic set, because we don't have the help. And so what do we need to do to get more help? Well, we've tried. Some people just don't want to volunteer to do certain things. So at the end of the day, you just have to have an expectation that if people can't do it because you waited too long or people can't do it because it's a really bad time, just might have to work around it. You might have to figure out another option, and just that's acceptable. That's okay.
One of the things I like to do to keep my kids involved, and I think I may have touched on this in another episode, is when I'm practicing. Because I don't read music, I have to sit there and I have to practice the songs over and over and over again. So what I do is I'll tell my kids, hey, come on, let's have a worship night. We'll go in the living room, we'll turn the songs on, I'll get out the guitar. My oldest son, he'll get out his bass, and my youngest son, he wants to play on drums, so he'll get all the buckets, and despite the fact that we actually have a drum set for him, he'll get all the buckets and sit out on the living room floor and just tap on those, happy as a clam, and I go over the songs that I'm going to be leading worship with that week. My wife gets to sit back and relax and just enjoy the fact that we're all together. My kids get to participate and they sing along and they just have a great old time, and they don't even realize Dad's practicing. They think it's just family worship time. And little things like that. I mean, it makes it a lot easier. It takes a lot of the burden when you get to kind of share the joy of worship with your family. And I think that that's something that we definitely need to focus on is worship is joyful. So and it's not just joyful when we're over there on the stage in front of the congregation leading them. It's joyful in preparation. So I really think one of the takeaways from this is focus on the joy of it. Don't let all of the difficulties of it drag you down too far. Ask for help, get some help, but don't lose your joy over it.
I'd like to make a point on that too. The name change specifically from budget worship, where we were focused on how to do worship on a lower budget, still has value, but one of the reasons we're changing the names is because a lot of our discussions really boiled down to just talking about different perspectives of worship, different perspectives of things that are happening around a worship service. What we're talking about today is no different, and we're going to really focus a lot on two key aspects. And one is looking at the different perspectives of worship, and that can be scriptural, that can be music, that can be prayer time. There's different ways of doing that. And then also at the same time, changing your perspective of worship. One of the key things in this episode, we're talking about wearing too many hats. Well, sometimes it's not about just releasing responsibilities. Sometimes it's about changing how you perceive those responsibilities. I don't have to set up chairs. I get to set up chairs in a country that gets to worship the Lord. Sometimes it's that easy. Just change how your outlook on it. Yes, there are things you need to get rid of, and yes, you don't need to overdo it, but sometimes I'm the world's worst about becoming jaded at, oh, great, there's another cantata. Hey, there's another choir special I got to deal with. Sometimes I have to sit back and pray and read the Word and be like, there are places in the world where they don't get to do a cantata. They don't get to praise. They don't get, so just perspective. It's all about perspective, and we want to key on that as much as we can. So, Jameson, your perspective is unique compared to ours, because while we get to lead worship as musicians, you actually have to lead it top to bottom, as in prepare, execute, and then prepare for the next week and things like that. To me, that's where the extra hats can really pile on, because it's not just the day of, it's actually your prep for the next week and things like that.
Right, yeah, it's really, not 24/7, but worship leader job as well as a pastor, I'm sure, it's always on, even if it's just in your mind, as you've always got to be thinking about, lots of things. And very easily can take on too many hats, voluntarily, involuntarily, because at the end of the day, it's your job. If we have one person to show up, then I'm going to lead worship with one instrument, and I'm going to make the slides. Or we wouldn't have slides. No, we wouldn't have slides. So.
And sometimes that's okay. I wish people would understand. Say, hey, we don't have to have slides on the stinking screen.
That's right. That's right. The past couple of Sunday nights, my church has Bible study, and they hadn't been doing music on Sunday night, so we decided to do a little bit of music. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to focus on stuff that everyone knows. You don't have to have a book. You don't have to have the lyrics on the wall. You don't have to have a piece of paper. You can just sing it because you know it. And we forget that we can do that.
I'll say this too. There was a concert many years ago I went to. I don't even remember when it was, but it was when Michael W. Smith was big, so you can do the math. It's been a while. One of the songs he sang, it was actually on a DVD that he produced called Let It Rain. Common song, great song, but he did it amazingly well at that concert. The spirit moved. It was just a massive move, and everybody was into it. It was the simplest of lyrics. There was probably a lot of people there that had never heard that song, and he literally just got to the chorus, and he's like, let it rain, open up the floodgates of heaven, let it rain. And yes, there's some verses, but he focused all his energy, and that congregation got into that, and it was a stadium full of people just at their loudest singing. Sometimes that's all it takes. It's great that we have verse 1, verse 2, chorus, and all this, but at the end of the day, most people sing the chorus. That's where they pour their heart in. The verse is just there to support the chorus. So if you have to go without lyrics or something, just really push the chorus, push a bridge that people can really get behind. It's all about just singing to God,
This is worship music. There's no such thing as too many bridges.
Yeah. Well, it's all about solutions,
There is when the software runs out of numbers for bridges. I will just say there's a technical limitation. Bridge
order.
11A and B.
Bridge, oceans, bridge.
Yeah, don't even get me started on blessings. The blessing.
Oh yes.
Oh my goodness.
But I tell you what, in all honesty, that song is probably one of the very few times that I have actually teared up on stage because I could feel just the movement of the Holy Spirit so strongly. There was such an emotional response to it that I almost walked off of the stage because that was the last one we did. I walked off the stage with tears coming out of my eyes. I just felt the Holy Spirit that much, and it was the bridges, and it's a real thing.
I like the song, but having worked the song, the lyrics before, I can tell you right now, there's not enough arrangement elements to cover that song.
I'll agree with you.
It's like
wholeheartedly.
bridge 13 A, B, and C. I was like, okay, at some point we're just singing a chorus with two words different. You know?
Right. I'll have my slide people if it's something like oceans or something that repeats. After the second repeat, go to a blank screen. You know, you don't need to read the same word over and over and over. You know what and that helps too because people, you know, if you have something to look at, you'll look at it. If you have something to hold, you'll fidget with it. So sometimes it takes getting it off there to, you know, get the focus in the room sometimes. I don't know how we got off on that. But.
Yeah, we went down a little rabbit hole on that one, but that happens when we have these kind of roundtable discussions. I mean, we basically have a couple of little notes around just things points that we need to hit on, and the rest of it we're just going around here, and we're just, you know, talking where the Spirit leads us. So.
And we're going to start, too. One of the things we're going to look at is bringing in subject matter experts on a lot of this stuff. Not because, I mean, like, yeah, I'm sure you get tired of hearing people talk about the same things in different ways. But there's a lot of this stuff that has deeper connotations to it. Like, for instance, we're going to talk about some stuff around mental health, burnout, things like that. And we want to bring in people that actually have some knowledge versus us just talking about what we feel. So that's some upcoming changes that we're going to be making, is bringing in some people that excel in things like keeping the joy when things don't necessarily call for it. People that excel in things like, for instance, running sound, the technical side of things, some that are pure musicians, some that are very highly trained musicians that can speak to the sheet music versus chord charts, that kind of thing. So those are some upcoming things.
So let's just take a minute and just talk about some solutions real quick. Finding time for your spouses and your children in the midst of all of this work. Well, one of the best ways to do that, I think, and this is for guys like us, we're really servant-hearted people. The hardest thing to do is to walk away from something because you want to make sure that everything gets done. But there are times that you just have to take a break. And I think probably one of the most important things to do, especially if you're in one of those situations where you're wearing too many hats, is take a break, take a season off, whether it be just a week, you know, and definitely plan for it. You know, don't just all of a sudden call up and say, "Hey, I'm not coming in. We'll just figure it out." No, plan for it in advance, but make sure that your team, your pastor knows, "Hey, I've got some downtime that I need to take right now because I've got to keep my head on straight. I can't get lost drowning in all of this responsibility that I've got." Don't be afraid to take a day, take a week, take a couple of weeks. Make sure that they've got somebody to fill in for you, but take some time. Your mental health is really important. Your state of mind is really important. And a lot of the times, if you spend too much time being bogged down by the responsibilities, you'll end up losing that. So definitely you want to make sure that you're taken care of. As a team leader, you want to make sure that your team is taken care of. Make sure you're watching for any instances where they're dealing with the same things. Make sure you don't have somebody on your team that's just drowning in responsibilities because they don't know how to say no. Make sure that they're getting the time off that they need. I mean, one of the key notes out of every episode that we've done so far has been watch out for burnout.
Yeah. Burnout's real, you know, and you have to. I have found that the best thing to do is just talk about it, you know. And as as a leader, or if you're in a situation where your leader should talk about it enough to where it's okay to talk about, for anyone to talk about. So the first thing I've done in the past is, first admit you got a problem. You know, I've got to narrow my responsibilities and go tell everyone involved. And then a lot of times that's all you have to do, because once everyone who you work with knows that you feel overwhelmed with too many things, they'll take it off of you because they want to. But you can talk about it. It's like, hey, I'm starting to feel a little bit of burnout here, or I'm starting to not enjoy this as much. I need to take a break. And if there is no one to help, then you actually need to just take a break, step away from it. If you don't know it's something you can't not continue to do forever, just take a step away from it just to see what happens with it,
No one could ever blame you for taking a break that you communicated you needed very badly. They can blame you for taking a break that you didn't communicate to anybody that you needed very badly.
Well, the flip side of that is hold it all in until you can't stand it anymore, and then your body's going to decide to take a break for you, and then no one's going to understand what happened.
And then you're talking about a prayer chain issue because you're in the hospital.
Right, possibly, yeah. So, ask for help. Some things are, in your responsibility realm. No matter how many details there are, they're still your responsibility. But if you're overwhelmed in that department, that's when you talk to whomever, your pastor, leaders in your church, and tell them, hey, I'm overwhelmed here. I feel like I've got too much stuff on me. And I promise you, they'll probably jump to help you or to try to come up with solutions. And I wanted to point out, when Matt was talking about bringing in people, I feel like no matter what we talk about, if we will also have some solutions. And I like that you use the word solutions, because I'm a solution guy. Problem always has solutions. Always. There's always a solution. So if it's something that we can't give educated advice on solution-wise, we'd like to bring in someone who could do that and get solutions for ourselves, because we're talking about stuff that we deal with.
Yeah, talking about your group that you go to talk to. Well, one of the ways that I deal with that is I come in here and do a video podcast with two friends of mine that I can just pour my soul out to, and guess what? Dealing with the same issues I'm dealing with, so we have our own little support group right here. I kind of like that.
Do what it takes. Yeah.
But absolutely, and do not ever be afraid to say I need help. And if you're the leader that's in charge, remember, part of your responsibility is to create an environment where anyone on your team can just stop and say, hey, I made a mistake, or hey, I need help with something. If your team isn't feeling safe enough doesn't feel like they have a safe enough space that they can do that, then maybe there's something in our leadership that we need to reevaluate, because we're charged to create an environment where we can be approachable, where we can not ever push anyone towards burnout.
I'll give you a specific example of something you can do, and it's taken me years to learn to do it effectively, but this last weekend was a really good example. We went on a trip with a youth group, and I have a blast doing these things, but I'm going to be honest with you, youth trips can kill you. I mean, they can burn you out so fast. I had help down there. I had amazing help. Some great people stepped up and helped me. And one of the hardest lessons I've ever had to learn personally is that when somebody says, hey, what can I do? Feeling comfortable saying, will you do this? As opposed to, no, I get that. I don't want you to have to do more than you need to do. But at the end of the day, these people want to help too. So when someone walks up to you and say, how can I help? Use them.
Right.
Use them. And don't feel bad about pointing at something and say, hey, move that cross over there, move that over there. Because if you don't and you pick it up and you do it without getting them to help you, guess what you're going to be doing for the next 6 years? So in positions of key personnel, especially like lead tech, praise leader, things like that, you really have to accept help and feel good about directing people, and delegating is the word you use in the real world, but the reality is, hey, they're willing to help. Can you please go do this? It's one less thing you're going to have to do from that point. So just another point, but I think we've hit the nail on the head on this. We may delve into it a little more, but unless y'all have anything deeper on this.
Yeah, just real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that I did want to, just make a note on, I'm not complaining. I put myself in this situation. It's up to me. Now, that being said, I love every bit of what I do. I love being the drummer. I love being the lead guitar player. Sometimes I'm the worship leader. but I'm not the only worship leader. And this is something that's also going to help combat burnout, is if you have other people that can pick up the slack for you, it's easier to push yourself a lot harder when you're not pushing yourself alone. When you have, like, say, I've got 3 worship leaders at my church, at my home church. I'm one of 3 worship leaders. The other 2 girls that are the worship leaders, they're fantastically talented. But even more important is they're reliable, they're dependable, they are always there. If one of us can't be there, there's always somebody there to pick up the slack. And I think just knowing that I have them to fall back on alleviates a lot of the burn. I think that's why I've been able to go for so long without burning out, is because I have help. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid, like Matt was saying, don't be afraid to use your help.
Yeah.
Jameson?
Yep, that's right. Only other thing I could add to the episode as a whole is a pastor told me years ago, gave me some advice, and said, if you're the person that people's going to come up all the time and said, hey, we should do this, hey, we should do that, which is what happens when you're in these positions, is a great way to not get overwhelmed is that if it's a good idea, say, hey, that's a great idea, you're in charge of it.
Yeah.
You know, because lots of people have ideas, but lots of people, only a few want to do the work.
Yeah, you'll find out really quickly what is a really good idea versus just a quick
Well, you know, and I heard about, I was in a program called Faith Bible Institute, and one of the things that I heard was the guy who was teaching that said, well, you get people come up to you all the time saying, well, somebody at this church should do something about this. Well, guess what? You're someone at this church. Right. Same idea. So, yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Hey, welcome to the church, somebody.
I like it. But anyway, we're just going to go ahead and wrap this up. We appreciate y'all being with us. Leave a comment if there's something you want to see us hit on, or if there's something you're interested in, or any way that we can help you. Just leave us a comment. Let us know how we can be helpful. We're here to serve. We're here to serve y'all. We're here to serve God's church. So I mean, that's the end game here. That's all we're here for. So if there's something that we can help you with, please reach out to us and let us know. You can leave a comment. You can hit us up on Facebook. We've got our Facebook group. There's lots of different ways. You can check out our website. We'll definitely respond, and we'll try anything we can to help you.
Sweet. I hope everybody has a great week. We'll try to get back into a rhythm here soon. Let us know how you feel about the name change. If there's anything you'd like us to tackle beyond this discussion, roundtable style, we want to take on some new things as well. So we're tossing it back and forth, so feel free to let us know. And have a blessed week.